Have you ever wondered what happens when the world changes so fast? That the life you knew begins to disappear? This is the story of an old Inuit hunter from the Arctic who thought his time was over, until he discovered that the very thing people called old was exactly what the future needed. Far above Alaska, inside the Arctic Circle, there's a small village called Kotzebue. In winter, the land turns white for miles. The wind cuts through skin like a knife. The sea freezes into a wide sheet of ice. To most people, it looks empty. But to Naruk, it was never empty. Naruk was an Inuit hunter. He had spent his whole life on the ice. He knew how to read the snow the way others read books. He could look at a frozen surface and tell where it was strong, where it was weak, and where death was hiding under a thin white layer. He knew the sound of safe ice. He knew the smell of storm wind. He knew how seals breathed under snow and how polar bears moved when they were hungry. For 60 years, the Arctic was his teacher, his home, and his test. When his son Inuit was a boy, Naruk took him out onto the ice before sunrise. The cold was so brutal it felt like the air could shatter. Still, Naruk walked calmly, his boots pressing into the frozen ground, his eyes always moving. "Listen," he would say. Inuit listened, but at first he heard nothing. Then Naruk tapped the ice with a bone-handled tool. "Not with your ears alone," he said. "Listen with your body." That was how he taught his son. Not with long speeches, not with paper, not with classroom walls. He taught with silence, patience, and survival. He taught Inuit how to face a blizzard without panic, how to follow the shape of drifting snow to find direction, how to stay alive when the world around you looked like one endless storm. But as Inuit grew older, he saw another world calling him. He was smart, very smart. His teachers told him he should leave the village and study in Anchorage. They said the future was in machines, roads, and buildings, not on the ice. Naruk did not stop him. He only said, "Learn what you must, but do not forget what kept your blood alive." Inuit went to Anchorage and became an engineer. He learned math, design, systems, and modern tools. He built a life far from the ice fields of his childhood. He wanted a better future, not only for himself, but for his father too. 1 year after Naruk had grown older, Inuit begged him to come to the city. "Father," he said, "you don't need to suffer in that cold anymore. Come live with me. There is heat, food, safety, and comfort." Naruk finally agreed. But after just 3 days, he was gone. He returned alone to Kotzebue. When Inuit called and asked why, Naruk gave the answer only he could give. "Those concrete roads are more slippery than ice," he said. "And those tall buildings make me more lost than a snowstorm." Inuit laughed when he heard it. But after the laughter came sadness, because he understood the truth behind those words. His father was not made for the city. And maybe the city was not made for men like his father. So Naruk went back to the only life he knew. But the Arctic he returned to was not the same Arctic that had raised him. The ice came later each year. It broke earlier. Places that had once been safe became dangerous. Old hunting routes no longer held. The wind changed. The animals moved differently. The elders spoke in quieter voices now. The young people left the village for jobs, schools, and easier lives. One by one, snowmobiles sat unused, old tools rusted, and stories stopped being passed down. Naruk kept hunting, but each season became harder. Some mornings, he stood on the shore and stared at the ice for a long time before stepping onto it. Not because he was afraid of the cold. He had never feared cold. He feared the new uncertainty. The land he trusted was changing beneath his feet. For the first time in his life, Naruk felt something deeper than hunger or exhaustion. He felt useless. He began to wonder if the world had moved on without him. Maybe the old ways were dying. Maybe he was one of the last pieces of a story no one wanted to hear anymore. Then one summer, a research ship arrived near the village. It carried a team of scientists studying climate change and its effect on Arctic ecosystems. They had computers, sensors, maps, and satellite data. They came to measure ice thickness, track wildlife movement, and understand what was happening to the north. Villagers watched them with curiosity. Some kept their distance. Naruk watched too. For 2 days, he said nothing. On the 3rd day, he walked straight to the team leader, a woman named Dr. Elena Brooks. She was standing near a table full of instruments, studying numbers on a screen. Naruk looked at the data, then looked at the sea. "I have walked on that ice for 60 years, he said. "I can tell you where it changed, how it changed, and when it began." Dr. Brooks looked up. At first, she did not fully understand what she had just been offered. Then she asked, "Would you show us?" Naruk nodded once, and that was the beginning. The scientists had technology. Naruk had memory. They had satellite images. He had scars from storms. They had charts and models. He had the kind of knowledge no machine could collect. He became their guide. Each morning, Naruk went out with them onto the ice. He showed them where cracks formed before they were visible. He pointed to snowdrifts and explained what they revealed about wind direction over the past week. He noticed animal tracks others walked past. He read the behavior of birds, seals, and fish-like messages written across the frozen world. One day, a young researcher proudly showed him satellite data proving that the ice in a certain region had become dangerously thin. Naruk studied the screen and then said quietly, "The satellite sees numbers. I can tell you the fish below the ice have already turned east. That means the seals will not come here next week." The researcher blinked. "How do you know that?" Naruk looked out at the water. "Because the Arctic speaks before it breaks." That line stayed with them. Soon, the team stopped seeing him as just an old hunter. He was not an assistant. He was not a symbol. He was not there for tradition's sake. He was essential. The scientists began recording his observations. They compared his knowledge with their data. Again and again, they found that his instincts matched patterns their models were only beginning to explain. When storms shifted unexpectedly, Naruk had already noticed it in the air. When animal routes changed, he had seen the signs days before. When dangerous ice threatened an expedition, he redirected them without hesitation. More than once, his judgment kept them safe. Inuit came home that fall to visit and saw something he never expected. His father, the man who had once fled the city after 3 days, now stood beside scientists from around the world, explaining the ice with quiet authority. Young researchers listened like students. Cameras recorded his voice, not because he was famous, but because he was right. Inuit felt pride rise in his chest so suddenly it almost hurt. That night, father and son sat together under a sky full of northern lights. For a long time, neither spoke. Then Inuit said softly, "I thought I left to find the future." Naruk looked up at the lights dancing across the dark sky. "And I thought I stayed behind in the past," he replied. He paused, "But maybe we were both wrong." Inuit turned toward him. Naruk's voice was calm, but full of something powerful. "Tradition is not a chain," he said. "It is a bridge. If you are willing to carry it, it can take you farther than fear ever will." Inuit never forgot those words. Success is built in small steps. Sometimes the greatest strength is patience. The moment you stop chasing others, you start finding yourself. Naruk had not been abandoned by time. He had been prepared by it. The world did not need less of what he knew. It needed more. His knowledge could not replace science, but science could not replace him either. Together, they formed something stronger, wisdom and discovery walking side by side across fragile ice. And that is the lesson of Naruk's story. You may think your old skills no longer matter. You may feel too late, too outdated, too different. But what if the part of you the world ignores today becomes the very thing the world cannot live without tomorrow? Do not throw away your roots just because the world is changing. A tree without roots does not grow. It falls. Naruk learned that being traditional did not mean being trapped. It meant carrying truth across generations. It meant offering the future something deeper than speed, something steady, tested, and real. He was not the last of a dying way. He was the first proof that the past still had power. And maybe that is true for you too. Maybe your pain has taught you something no school can teach. Maybe your struggles gave you wisdom no book can hold. Maybe the part of your story you were ready to hide is the very part meant to guide someone else. Never be ashamed of what shaped you, because sometimes the eyes that see the farthest are the ones that have endured the longest. If this story touched your heart, like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. And remember this, the world changes. Seasons change. People change. But real wisdom never becomes useless. It only waits for the right moment to be seen.